Welcome back to Unlimited with Exceptions. Health and Tech Podcast.
They want in on it.
We are here with Kung Fu Master Amanda Nystrom, National Health Board Certified Health and Well-Being Coach. Amanda, what are we talking about today?
Apparently how my dogs have to be included in everything.
They are needy.
They are. Well, today I'm going to torment you just a little bit. And by
Ooh.
torment, I mean just poke back. You said something, I think it was last week when you were reviewing an episode that we had recorded, and you said that you think that I take this too seriously.
Maybe.
And it stuck with me because initially I wanted to be, well, no, of course I don't take this too seriously. And then the other part of me was like, yeah, I do take this too seriously, and we should all take this more seriously. But I think regardless of how I took it in the moment, I wanted to bring it back up because there's some really interesting implications with the statement of taking it too seriously. And today I really want to talk about two different spectrums of taking too seriously that I think that are damaging our health, especially our health in tech.
Okay. Well, I do think that you take this too seriously. Now, but don't get me wrong, that doesn't mean that the information shouldn't be taken seriously. You know, our health is important, and far too many people, they don't take it seriously. If it's inconvenient, they don't do it. They're going to eat that Big Mac, or that, yo quiero Taco Bell, whatever it is that they serve now. And it's killing themselves. But it's easy, so it's okay to kill yourself. Right? And I'm not talking about intentional mental health issues here where, you really should seek help. I'm talking about we as a society have become so driven by the convenience that, people are slowly killing themselves. And it gets compounded, right? Because first it's what you're about to talk about, which leads to burnout or exhaustion, and a desire not a desire, but an urgency for convenience, right? And then that urgency turns into a Big Mac with fries. Well, that's your fourth this week, which means you've had 3 weeks worth of calories, and you wonder why you're fat, right? And your blood pressure or cholesterol is too high or whatever. And then we get back into this cycle of what you're about to talk about, and it just keeps going, right? But let me be very clear. It's the only thing I meant by you take this too seriously is that we should be having fun on this podcast, period. If we're not having fun, we shouldn't be doing it. That doesn't mean we can't portray and convey good information, but we should be having fun while we do it.
I appreciate your clarification. I wasn't really offended. It was just more of one of those statements that, we talked about in our last episode, how every brain is different, right? So the way that you said it, I heard it in a way that was negative, but that doesn't mean that it was negative. And let me reword that. The important thing that I wanted to bring up about your statement is that exactly what you just said. We do not take our health seriously enough. We take other things seriously, which is what I'm going to get into in a few minutes. But for right now, think about what you just said. We think about the urgency of convenience, of instant gratification, not of 5 years from now. We no longer think big picture.
We don't consider the cost.
Yeah, we don't consider the cost. We don't consider how hard our bodies work just to keep us upright, because all that we've known for the most part is that our body is just going to do whatever it needs to do to keep us upright until it can't. And it's those small decisions that we make today that, determine how long our body can fight for us instead of against us.
So you just said something that I'm just gonna say this because I think it would be an interesting thing to discuss perhaps in a future episode, which is how certain reactions to words, and you said each brain works differently. It is, and this isn't just you, it's most people that I run into, including myself sometimes. But that people who, when you are presented with a constructive comment, it becomes a destructive emotion.
Mm.
I didn't say you were a bad person. I didn't say you were doing anything wrong. I didn't say, God damn it, release the sphincter a little bit. All I said was, I think you take this a little too seriously, which was a constructive comment for reflection that had a destructive response initially.
I could see you putting that statement on LinkedIn.
Maybe. Depends on my mood. Am I in my leadership inspire role, or am I in my tear down all the analysts who are full of shit and trying to make AI the most important thing in the world? Anyway, let's get on topic here because I know you have an important topic. You thought about it, you wrote it down, you wanted to share it. Where are we going?
I think the flip side of not taking our health seriously enough, that opposite end of the spectrum, is that we take things that don't matter way too seriously. And a really good example that comes to mind when I think about this is our chronic overthinking. And I don't know about you, but I know almost everybody I know in tech chronically overthinks. And it's pervasive.
The glass
I've
isn't
been
half full. The glass isn't half empty. The glass is exactly 37.9% volume.
I'm not getting into that because that'll be a whole other podcast. But when we think about things that don't necessarily matter, and I know that everybody's value system is different. I know that everybody has things that are really important to them that aren't important to the person right next to them. So I'm not trying to take away from that, but I do know that the code that you write is not as important as the relationship that you have with your partner. Generally speaking, right? And so when we focus all of our energy on overthinking things that are not of high value to us deep down, we ruminate on it, back to that thing that we talked about with the telomere effect. And when we do that, we literally reduce our lifespan over these things that don't really matter.
So, initial response, who are you to tell me what matters? Now, I'm being objective. I'm not talking about you and me. Okay. Um, but when you were talking about that, I agree with you. There is no piece of code that you will write on this planet that is more important to the relationship you will have with your partner. But the reason so many hardcore engineers have a hard time with even finding a partner is because they don't recognize that. And, you know, while I think there's degrees or spectrums that we could discuss on that, I think a lot of it is about control. It's not about what's actually important, it's about what they can control. A developer can control the effort and the output um, of the code they write. They're
Mhm.
creating something and they control what is created. Um, whereas forget relationship with your partner, human relationships in general, you can't control. at least not in a healthy way. Um, and you get into all kinds of complexities of the human condition when you talk about that.
Absolutely. And I'm like I said, I'm not trying to say what matters or what should be important to you or to anyone really. I only have my own experience. This is more about
Hold on. I don't mean to interrupt, but yes, it does matter, and you are allowed to have an opinion about what should be important to people. This idea that we have to, everybody just has to kind of get along and float in fairy world is fucking stupid, right? It's okay to have an opinion. It's okay for you to say, I think it's important that you not eat that seventh taco, or that it is, oh, I think that you are making a bad decision, right? That is okay. Not everybody makes good decisions. And that doesn't mean you're right. Don't get me wrong. I mean, you have to, if you're going to embrace the idea that your opinion matters, you have to embrace the idea that someone's going to tell you that your opinion doesn't matter.
true. And accountability is honestly one of the most underused tools that we neglect when we're suffering, right? Like if you want to not eat that seventh taco, but nobody is there to tell you not to eat it or that you shouldn't eat it, you're
Oh, I'm
much more
eating the seventh
likelihood.
taco.
Yeah, exactly. You're going to eat the taco. But if you know that you have an accountability partner or somebody who's willing to step up and make it slightly uncomfortable, to ask you, to face you about it, your higher likelihood is that you're not gonna eat the taco. And it's not necessarily shame-based either, it's really just having somebody there to hold you accountable, and often we think of it as shaming, I think, but it's so much more important than that, and I feel like that is a really good way to demonstrate what you said a few minutes ago about how I had a negative response or a destructive response
Mhm.
to what you said. And it's often what we do when we think of things that are helpful for us, like asking for help, like having an accountability partner, or just somebody who's gonna call us out when they see something that we have talked to them that we've expressed that we don't wanna do this, can you help me do that? But we have a tendency not to do that, right? And one of the reasons is because we don't think big picture. Health doesn't matter to us. We'll get to it later. But then the flip side of like, there's a very real shame induced, I don't even know that society does. It's like if you ask for help, you're to be looked down upon.
Well, and we've alluded to upcoming episodes about talking about why is it so hard to ask for help. But what's the other side of, you said there were two sides of what you wanted to talk about.
Well, the main thing is that our chronic overthinking is debilitating us. And the context behind this and the science behind it actually comes from like the psychological costs of choice. We have went from, you had like two options to when you went and bought a pair of jeans, you had two options and now you have like 37 options. The amount of choices that we have been given over our expansion is actually causing us to chronically overthink, and therefore our satisfaction is less, our depression is higher, and we are, generally speaking, unhappy, and we don't seek what really matters to us because we're so stuck in the whole psychological costs of choice.
I think there's something deeper here. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but one, I think it's a personality trait, right? Um, and I think it's a manipulation tactic. Okay, so let's step back for a minute, and you and I go into the store, and you want to buy a pair of jeans, and I want to buy a pair of jeans. Regardless of my personality, I'm going to have 3 options. And it doesn't matter which 3 there are. If it says 36, 32, they're gonna fit. A woman goes into you go into the same store, you will have 40 options. And no matter you can take all 40 and you're going to say size 8. One will be a size 4, one will be a size 6, one will be a size 12, 2 will be a size 8. They all fit differently. And for your particular issue, in fact, not only do they fit differently, they probably don't have talls. So everything looks like you put on pants from when you were 10, right? So while I do agree, choices, right? So a counter example for uh, mechanically inclined individuals, men, is if I go into a hardware store and I'm looking at wrenches, I will have
Hmm.
40 different options. But is it really the psychology of choice that we're talking about here? I mean, I know those studies, and I know where that idea is going. But it seems like if we look a little deeper, what we're really talking about is an individual's ability to, one, accept that they do not control their environment, and two, that the choice that they make is just okay. There's no wrong choice between those 40 pairs of jeans. They still cover up your ass when you're walking down the road.
Well, you hope they do.
Now, well, you hope they do. And I understand that there is an element of, okay, but do they make my ass look good? Right? But seriously, the reality is they're just a pair of pants.
I don't disagree with you. And you are, I guess, jumping ahead just a little bit of what I wanted to get into today, because I think that we don't think about how much we overthink things because we don't realize how many decisions we're having to make per day because we've been given so many different choices. And I just wanted to get into the breakdown really of what it looks like when you actually have to make all these decisions and what you're doing to your psyche and your health and the stress that it puts on that in the hopes of getting to what you stated, right? Of it's not that big of a deal. What's more important is to make a decision. But if you're constantly making decisions and you don't know how to get to that point, it's exhausting. And it stresses your body out beyond measure and you don't even realize it. It's one of those hidden stressors.
Okay. We're at 18 minutes, 20 seconds. Run with it.
Well, the main thing is that your brain actually, like if you were to decide which wrench to choose, if you're looking at 40 of them, has to go through the whole process of evaluating which type. Does it solve the problem? Does it help me with my ultimate goal? All of those different questions go into that decision, and it makes it huge. It turns it into, it almost like blows it out of proportion when you just want to go get a wrench, right? And so that actually adds psychological exhaustion to you, which turns into your brain's executive functioning becoming overloaded. And then you start thinking, well, what if I make the wrong choice? And how is that going to impact? And that leads to actually not having as much satisfaction with your choice, regardless, because you had the option to think, how is it going to, like, how could this other one, if I choose wrong, have been better? You immediately implement doubt.
Grass is always greener.
The grass is always greener. However, if we reduce the options and you're given like 3 wrenches, you can ask the simple questions, or not necessarily simple, it depends on what you're looking at, and maybe not always wrenches, of like, does this help me with my ultimate goal? Yes, no. If it's a no, you have 2 options. But we have given everybody all the options for everything. Like, you don't like Uber? There's Lyft. You don't like Lyft? There's a taxi. You don't like taxi? There's something else, you know? And so
Waymo.
it yeah. So it leads to, like an opportunity cost weight in our brain that we're faced with that we don't even realize. And, like I said, those unchosen options, they subtract from the satisfaction that we would get if we could just have less choice.
You know, it's interesting, less choice, you bring this up. And, granted, there's not a lot of people don't get this privilege. So I don't wanna take away from the fact that this is what I'm about to say is absolutely a privilege. But there is a reason I only fly Delta. And it's in fact, I was reading an article about Delta today because Delta is the most profitable airline in the United States. But they were also an airline that 20 years ago filed for bankruptcy. And so when they were coming out and they were trying to figure out their values as a company, they went after a market that no other airline did at the time. And in fact, it hasn't until recently, which is, and it's not necessarily the affluent flyer. Okay. Although, yes, they do make a lot of money off of affluent flyers. It's the flyer that doesn't want worry. They take all of the pain of flying away from you. Flying sucks. But if you buy Delta, they just take care of you. It's just taken care of. How can I help
Mhm.
you, Mr. Drake? Right? That is something that a lot of people don't get to experience. And I think that's kind of why in one segment Delta's been so successful because the people that have the privilege to enjoy that type of service, it removes the stress of flying,
Mhm.
right? And people do what more than anything? They seek convenience. Delta's convenient. It's not cheap, but it's sure as hell convenient and it's comfortable. And I don't, anytime I fly Delta, I don't have to worry about a thing.
And they are listening to what people need and turning it into essentially a product, right? They are providing that service in order to eliminate stress. But most of us, I mean, we're dealing with all kinds of stress, and it comes from not having those things taken care of, and then when you
Mhm.
go to make a decision, you have that, like, anticipated and the post-decision regret, because what if you make the wrong choice? And you're given so many different choices, and, it compounds into this escalation of expectations too, right? Because you have these hopes and these dreams, but when like, the chosen option inevitably doesn't go perfect because perfection does not exist, or it just turns out normal, right? It's not the best possible option, then we feel profound disappointment just because we made a decision, right? And it's because we have so much that we process, and it leads to that overthinking, which leads to the chronic rumination, which leads to, uh, you know, closing down our telomeres effectiveness and shortening them. So I know that this seems all over the place, but it's all really connected.
No, I agree with you. I think the hard part for me, and and I know you experienced this in our relationship, much to your frustration, is I mean, so what? And what I mean by that, there's a great movie with a young Tom Cruise called Risky Business. And in that movie, he's presented with all these choices because of some mistakes that he made. Some of these choices involve sex workers. Um, but the underlying part, the the light bulb going off for him was at a moment when he just said, "Fuck it." the reality in life is that there is no perfection. No matter what choice you make, there's going to be something wrong with it. And the best you can, work for is a B plus. That doesn't mean you won't get an A plus. It doesn't mean you won't fail. But if you're working for more than a B plus, you are working beyond the capacity of your individual capabilities. Because generally speaking, a typical person is only a B plus. So let it go and say, fuck it, make the decision, move on.
There's a great book that I read last year called The Paradox of Choice: Why More is Less by Barry Schwartz. And it goes into there's two different kinds of people. There's the maximizer who's constantly seeking A plus in life. It has to be perfect. It has to be the best. And these are typically the individuals that chronically overthink to a point where you can't even follow the logic if they were to explain it to you. And a lot of us suffer periods of that, right? And I
Sure.
know I used to be one of these people. I had to be the absolute best, the best bang for my buck, the best bang for me, right? It was just I shouldn't say that. Um,
I
but
believe it was you when you took one of the hardest tests in health and you came out of that test and you said, I failed. And you were upset and you're like, I failed, I totally blew it, I totally blew it. And then when they finally graded it and got it back to you, you had an A plus.
it was not an A plus.
96 is an A plus.
It was a 96 in one area, but regardless, I said that we all go through phases. But there's this type of person who they've shown through science and all kinds of stuff that those individuals tend to actually be more depressed, be more unhappy, and be more unable to actually make progress in life. And then there's I'm sure I'm going to mispronounce this, but like the satisficers or something like that, which is exactly what you are. It's I'm going to try to find the best within my value set. Right? And then I'm going to make a decision and I'm going to run with it. And the reason that I brought this up on this podcast today is because I think we've gotten into this cycle of leaning toward being more of a maximizer and less of a satisficer. And we are always striving for perfection, for this situation in life that, quite frankly, if we were to lean into good enough, we would absolutely have a much higher quality of life and be able to take that step back and maybe not necessarily eat that seventh taco.
It's funny that you said that, the maximizers. There's a whole trend right now called looks maxing.
Oh, interesting.
Uh, and it's literally trying to become the portrait of the maximum amount of handsome or beauty or the right jaw percentage to ear height or whatever. And it's an unfortunate trend. And once again, we can blame social media. But the maximizers of this world, and I've been a maximizer. I know what that's like. Um, and it's not about achieving. It's not about doing good. It is about you feeling lesser and attributing your value based on external metrics.
Hmm.
You go after that A plus, you go after that extra percentage point of profit, you go after all these stuff, and you sacrifice what real values are. Or I shouldn't say real, you sacrifice what quality values are, relationships, those types of things, because you're always seeking to fill a hole in yourself without addressing the hole in yourself.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yep. Well, we talked about this the other week. When you take a moment to just be with yourself, nothing else, it's terrifying.
Hmm.
But it really gives you an opportunity, there's multiple points through life that you get these opportunities, but to reframe or change your direction and how you want to be as a person. And I gave up maximizing or being a maximizer because it was killing me,
Mm.
right? I see so many people. I mean, you run into them all the time. Everyone's seeking venture capital, private equity, that next valuation. Sam Altman from OpenAI, not only is a maximizer, he's a psychopath, right? Just that continual build for the next thing. They're not conquering worlds. They're destroying themselves from the inside and taking down thousands of people with them who think they're somehow important. When you do that, again, you're trying to fill a hole, and you're never going to fill it with that. You will only fill it by being mindful about yourself.
And by having those values and knowing what's really important to you and realizing that having all of the decisions, or not all of the decisions, all of the choices is not necessarily a good thing. It causes ourselves so much stress.
Mhm.
And if we were to just be a satisficer, figure out what's good enough in line with our values, we'd be so much happier.
You said this is all connected. I'm gonna close this out with this. It's actually kind of interesting. Everything we've been talking about, because what we're talking about is another form of the bad state based stress, the
Threat
fight or
based?
flight stress, threat based stress. Okay, so that there's a threat by having these choices, and in order to turn that to a challenge based threat, you have to make the decision on that choice and execute it, because now you've solved the problem. But if you're a maximizer, I think one of the key things, and we ran into this at the conference, right? I mean, Megan, we were told by multiple people, was the best keynote. We had 6 keynotes, right? A room full of maximizers got told to pause.
Hmm.
So, folks, this has been another Health and Tech with Amanda Nystrom. Remember that no matter how hard you try, you will fail. So you might as well just run with it.